Hello everyone, this is Rick and welcome to Astral Club. This episode is Astral Future Travel and Getting Involved. Before we get into it, just want to mention Patreon. If you'd like to support the work of Astral Club, you can do so on Patreon. When you do so, you get advanced episodes on Sunday. You gain access to a library of downloaded episodes that you can put on your favorite podcast app and listen to anywhere. And of course, there's a Patreon email where we can talk back and forth and you can ask questions and what have you. Next up, if you'd like to learn to astral project, I offer private lessons. All you have to do is go to the description and find the email there, and you can request information and I'll send it to you. And by the way, the Patreon link is in the description as well. Okay, astral future travel and getting involved. I actually have a playlist devoted to time travel. And certainly if that's a topic of interest to you, and it may be, you might want to check out that playlist. But I have lots of mixed emotions associated with traveling into the future. As one travels into the future, you quite often find, and let me remind once again, these are possible futures. The future is not engraved in stone. We as a species and as individuals help to determine what future we bring into reality. But with that said, let's continue. I've often struggled with the idea of going into the future when there are people around, humans, because I have this Star Trek tape playing in the back of my head telling me that I shouldn't interfere with other civilizations. Yet time and time again, I find myself getting involved and helping these various civilizations for one reason or another. So what I'd like to do is just review some of the cases where I got involved, and I want your opinion. Let me know whether you agree with what I did or what you would have done in my place, or if I was wrong and I shouldn't have gotten involved, and you can tell me that. First of all, I want to start off from the standpoint that I'm not a pacifist. I believe in self-defense. I served in the U.S. military. I have respect for people who have pacifist beliefs. It's just that I don't share them. My basic philosophy is I don't look for trouble. I don't start fights. But if somebody goes out of their way to start it with me or, my country, then I feel obligated to get involved. Let's go over some particular examples from my past future projections. First up, 10 million years in the future, I didn't encounter any humans, but I encountered what might be called intelligent or semi-intelligent bat-like creatures that seem to have evolved from the bats that we know today. They were much bigger and had much larger wingspans, and their bodies were larger as well. And I suspect their intelligence and their brain capacity expanded at the same time. They had digits at the end of their wings that seemed to be more developed than what they are today, in that they could be used to manipulate simple tools, something that I believe our present-day bats wouldn't be able to do very efficiently. So I encountered these creatures, but I hadn't meant to get involved with them. I landed in that time period, and soon thereafter I was attacked by a large carnivorous type beast. It surprised me and it attacked me out of nowhere. It knocked my astral body down, but I wasn't actually hurt. However, these creatures saw me being attacked by this predator, which was also their primary predator as well, which is why they nested in cliff tops that had a lot of holes that they had kind of dug into the side of the mountain using these primitive tools and their digits with an opposable thumb that they had developed. So they came to my defense. Now, I didn't actually need help, but they didn't know that. From their standpoint, it looked like some being was being attacked, and it wasn't even one of theirs. And they came and attacked this beast and drove it off me. As a result, I felt indebted to them and spent some time with them, a few days. And one of the things I did, because they suffered at night when it was cold, is I taught them how to make a fire. I remembered from my Cub Scout days how to, the various ways to make a fire. I taught them how to do that, and they were able to do that for themselves. So I affected their evolution probably in a big way, because let's face it, fire and control of fire was one of the keystone developments of our species and the ancestors of our species. So, you could argue there that maybe I shouldn't have done that, but there you go. Number 2, my future tribe, which existed at 15,000 AD. I spent a number of years with them. Now, originally, all I wanted to do was just fly overhead and observe what was going on. That was my intention. But I looked down and I saw this starving tribe walking, and they looked very thin. And what really got me was there was a little girl who at that time was about the age of my daughter. And she even looked a little like her, and she was starving. I tried to fly away, and I actually did, but then I couldn't. I had to come back, and I landed in front of them, and it startled the heck out of them. But I showed them that I wasn't a threat. I began to communicate with them telepathically. At first, it was fairly basic telepathy, but eventually it got better as they got better at it, and as I got better at communicating with them. Eventually, I became part of the tribe. Now, they were mostly hunter-gatherer, but they also had crops, which they grew and used to help them get over the starvation times during the winter. And that the problem was that they were being continually raided by another tribe that was larger and more aggressive than they were. And not only would they steal their food, they'd steal their crops when they were ready. And if they tried to stop them or tried to defend their crops, they'd end up being slaughtered. I couldn't allow that. I couldn't stand by and just allow this tribe who had taken me in this distant future, who trusted me, just to allow this to continue to happen. So I taught them defensive techniques. I taught them how to set up what I've been trained, how to set up an ambush and a kill zone in a typical U shape. I participated in those ambushes. I showed them how to make snares for hunting. I also showed them how to make punji pits. Punji pits were used in Vietnam. The Viet Cong would dig these pits and then stick spikes, often smeared with excrement, and then they'd cover them up, hoping that some unaware American soldier would fall into it and end up hurting himself, wounding himself, and or perhaps even killing him. I taught them all of this, both for hunting and for defense. We were able to give that tribe that was aggressive a couple bloody noses, and they stopped raiding the crops, which allowed my people to have the food that they worked for to get them over the starving times during the winter. I taught them other things as well. I taught them basic herbology. That was one of my favorite topics at the time, and I studied it extensively. I showed them how to take willow tree bark, preferably from the branches, because I don't like taking it from the trunk because you can actually injure the tree, open it up to infections by fungus and a variety of diseases. But taking it off the branches is actually a little bit easier because you can get to the actual medicinal layer easier, and you're not, doing major injury to the willow tree. Now, what you may or may not know is that when you make willow tree bark tea, you're actually getting a dose of salicin. Salicin is what the aspirin makers used to make salicylic acid. Now, the good thing about salicin is it's good for pain, it's good for osteoarthritis, things like that. But it's not as harsh on the stomach as the salicylic acid actually is. At any rate, it was a very easy way to help them relieve pain and fever. And I showed them how to do that. I also showed them basic crop rotation and slash and burn agriculture. In this possible future, the population was relatively low and there was a lot of land available. So, slash and burn was doable by the tribe because they were able to move on when necessary because there was enough land. But I also showed them how to do crop rotation too. The other thing that I showed them was how to make a sling. Now, they had spears, for instance, but they didn't have slings. And slings are an underappreciated weapon. And the ancients, though, were very much aware of the sling. The Romans, the ancient Romans, would often have people who were usually mercenaries and from different areas of the world had different specialties. And there were peoples who were very good with slings. Slings are especially very good against unarmored opponents, whether you're talking about humans or whether you're talking about animals. And they can have quite the reach, too. I remember as a kid, I had a sling. And, I was just a kid. But the time that I spent playing with it, I was able to hit a soda can from 100 feet away or around 30 meters pretty reliably. And I'd hit it pretty darn hard, too. I'd put a hole through the can. So it's an effective weapon, and it's very easily made, too, with, the types of materials that you can have as a hunter-gatherer. So teaching them how to use that sling helped them for defense from a distance and also helped them to hunt. Next up was the future Crocodile Temple. This was somewhere between 12,000 and 13,000 AD. I'm not sure which number I aimed for when I went there. But what I found was this giant crocodile temple, and there seemed to be a priestly class, which then had a lot of all I can consider looked to me like slaves. But what I really found questionable is I saw them marching off some of these slaves, and by reading the thoughts of the priests, I could see that they were going to sacrifice them to their crocodile gods, and they were nearby a body of water that was infested with large crocodilians. That was something that I couldn't just stand by because they had not only men, but women and children. Most of the men, though, were old, so they were probably choosing them that way. So it was old men, women, and some young children, which I guess to them were expendable. I couldn't just stand by and watch these people being fed to crocodiles. I couldn't do it. So I descended and scared the bejesus out of the priests and even the people who were being taken there. And I attacked the priests. I didn't kill them, but I definitely did harm them. And then I started a bit of a rebellion, telling the slaves that they could leave, and I made sure I stood by while they did that quickly, and I hope they got away. I can tell you one thing: those future priests of the Crocodile Temple may have just found out that there was a tougher god out there somewhere. Now, naturally, I don't want them erecting statues, but I do want them to stop sacrificing humans to crocodile gods. Now, I mean, if you want to find fault with me on that one, go ahead. Lastly, I recall my astral journey to a future space base. And in this particular future, and I don't know exactly what the Earth time was, because when I tried to ask what year it was, I got the year that as calculated by the space base around an alien star. So it meant nothing to me. And the person I talked to, who was a young girl, didn't know what the year was on Earth. She just didn't know. Now, what I found out was that this young girl, who I sensed had been my daughter in this lifetime, she had gone to this space base, which I believe was a logistics base that supported travel in that area, and it supported a mining colony for one thing. Anyway, her father had to go alone to this mining colony for a job, and he left her with some money and promised to send her more money after he started working. However, something must have happened to him, because she'd been there for a year. The credits that she had were long gone, and she had survived by working with some other criminal individual to steal credits from other people's cards. And that's how she was able to keep herself alive and fed while dodging whatever security the base had. I couldn't help but feel badly for her. And so after speaking with her, I could sense that the newly arriving people, that one of them was a possible future self of myself, and that he was a psychological counselor that was going to work on that base. And I was able, because it was a future self of mine, to briefly integrate with him, and I was able to communicate with him telepathically and let him know about this little girl and how she needed his help, because to either find her father or to take care of her, and he agreed, because I shared with him, the knowledge that she had been our daughter in a past life, and he was also. It's weird talking about myself. He was also a nice guy who, wanted to help. So once again, here I am getting involved in future lifetimes. So what I'd like to know is, what do you think? What should I have done? Should I have gotten involved with all of these different future time zones? Or which ones shouldn't I have? Or what do you think I should have done? I'm very interested. If you liked this episode, please hit the like button, share it with those of like minds. Subscribe if you haven't already. Make sure that bell is solid. And as I said, please leave me your input, questions, comments. I really want to know what you think. Because I have mixed feelings myself about some of this stuff. So you're not going to offend me. Anyway, this is Rick, and I will see you on the astral plane.